Good morning and welcome. We're so happy that you joined us today. We have made some significant changes to our Columbia Disadvantaged Business Enterprise program. And we want to go over those changes with you. And we also want you to consider becoming a CDB.
This meeting is being recorded.
We would like for you to consider becoming a DBE, a CDBE, if you are a certified DBE within our 8-county CSA. And we'll go over those requirements today. So again, welcome. Next slide. My name is Melissa Lindler. I'm the director for the Office of Business Opportunities, and we have our compliance team that is responsible for implementing the CDBE guidelines that we're going to share with you today, as well as other programs, our local business enterprise program, our mentor protege program, and of course, our CDBE program. So our compliance team consists of Ms. Juliet Nelly. She's our program compliance administrator. Latanya Germany, she's our program compliance specialist. And Ms. Kalina Ginyard, she's our program coordinator and also heads our diversity initiative that we have here at the City of Columbia. One thing I want to share with you, next slide, is that this effort, the CDBE program, touches many departments, not just the Office of Business Opportunities. And the changes that have been made to what you're going to hear today could not have been done without our supporting departments that also touch the CDBE program. Special thanks to our, of course, Columbia Water, the Department of Procurements and Contracts, headed by Ms. Sandra Middleton. She's on the phone. And of course, Columbia Water is headed by our ACM, Clint Sheely. He's also on the call today, and our city attorney's office. And again, with everything that we do, the success is only as good as our leadership. And of course, that is our mayor, our city council, our city manager, and our assistant city manager, Missy Gentry. Everybody has been actively involved in making these changes to this policy. We want to make sure it's solid. We also want to make sure it's fair, and not only for the City of Columbia, but also our participants. So the changes that you hear, they're great changes. They're significant changes. So please pay very close attention. If you are a certified DBE in our 8-county areas, Fairfield, Kershaw, Saluda, Newberry, Calhoun County, Orangeburg, Lexington, Richland, Kershaw, Fairfield County. Pay close attention. You can be a CDBE. We will register you as a CDBE if your certification is in good standing and you reside in any of those counties. Again, thank you. And I'll end it by saying why, answer the question, why do we have this program? And it's because of the commitment of the city, our leadership, our city manager, our city assistant city managers, and all of these departments that I just mentioned to you, to create an equal playing field when it comes to securing contracts in regards to city projects. So this program was actually started as a result of our 2006 disparity study that showed that women and minorities were substantially underutilized in the procurement opportunities of the City of Columbia. That was in 2006. We have worked diligently. This policy right here that they're going to go over today was created actually in 2016 and was recently updated or revised in March of this year, 2021. We are in the process of doing a new disparity study that's currently underway. And hopefully one of the things, that they're going to do is look at our program. So these changes have been made, but keep in mind, with greatness and with success, it's a constant evolution. So there may be additional adjustments that we may make in the future with this program. But again, thank you. And thank our team, our Columbia team, for being on the call today. And I'll turn it over to Juliet. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Good morning, everyone. I just want to throw out a few housekeeping rules. Just make sure that your cell phones are silenced. You should already be muted in the beginning of this call. However, just check periodically to make sure that your Zoom session is on mute, as well as question and answers throughout today's presentation. We'll have about 4 different slides that are Q&A. So if you can save your question and answer, or sorry, your questions for that time, we'd really appreciate it, just due to the time constraints of this presentation, as we have another one again at 2 o'clock, and that will be a repeat of this call. So if you're on this call, you're not going to miss anything at 2 o'clock. So I did want to talk about the agenda for today, talk about the program purpose, which I think Melissa kind of already went over a little bit, as well as, what is a Columbia CDBE, our Columbia Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, and you'll hear that acronym CDBE a lot throughout this presentation. How you can become certified as a CDBE, as well as updates to our CDBE program guidelines, as Melissa said. It wasn't just OBO, it was multiple departments within the city that came together to update and enhance these guidelines to the program, as well as we're going to go over a Procurement Contracts is going to come in, and they're going to give us a little brief CDBE solicitation overview. And then we'll talk about the IFB process, which is your information for bid, stage 1 and stage 2 of that IFB process. And then we'll talk about more guideline updates, as well as the new forms. And some of them have been updated. They may not be new, but they've been updated. And then capital improvement projects. So that's called CIP, but if you're not familiar with that, that's upcoming projects that the city will have put out for solicitation later on in the year. So please stay tuned for that, as well as discussions on our CDBE outreach event, which we'll discuss more later on this call for June 2nd, 2021. Next slide, please. And I'd like to thank Melissa Lindler, Aisha Driggers, Kalina Ginyard, as well as Latanya Germany. They were the core team that worked many late nights and helped us revamp this program. So thank you to them as well. So the purpose of the program, I think Melissa covered that, and she did talk about how the program was adopted in 2016, and then it was amended again in 2021. But I just want to go over that again and just talk about how the program is to ensure that CDBEs, which again is our Columbia Disadvantaged Business Enterprises, have an equitable opportunity to compete for subcontracts here at the City of Columbia. So this next slide, we talk about, what is a CDBE? I'm sure most of you have heard of the term DBE. Well, Columbia would put a C at the beginning of ours, and that's our Columbia Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. So CDBE is certified socially or economically disadvantaged business enterprise, and that's that would have an office. You have to have an office located within the Columbia Orangeburg Newberry Combined Statistical Area, CSA, for a minimum of 1 year. And that sounds like a mouthful, but I do want to go over, which again you'll hear CSA referenced throughout this presentation. And when we're talking about CSA, we're talking about the Columbia Orangeburg Newberry Combined Statistical Area. And that's defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. And again, those counties are Calhoun, Fairfield, Kershaw, Lexington, Orangeburg, Newberry, Saluda, as well as Richland. So here we want to talk about how you become a CDBE. So here's Aisha's going to pull up a application for us from our website, but that was the link. And again, at the end of today's presentation, we're going to send you a lot of information. And at the end of this presentation, I will go over exactly what we're going to send you. But as Aisha's pulling that up, the first thing you have to be is you have to be a certified entity. So when we talk about certified entity, that's certifying entities such as SCDOT, South Carolina Department of Transportation, SBA, Small Business Association, certifying entities such as those, but is not limited to those, and we'll get into that more as well. So is your company located within the combined statistical area? Again, we're back to that CSA. Are you in one of those 8 counties that I mentioned earlier? If so, you would check that box saying that your company is located in the CSA. And then we've got Secretary of State. Is your company within good standing? If you're not on the Secretary of State, then we take a Schedule C, Form 1040, which is for your sole proprietorship. Also, a W-9, as well as the last checkoff box, which is my company is a socially and/or economically disadvantaged enterprise. So this is the form that you would be filling out. And you would send to the Office of Business of Opportunities for us to approve. And it would be sent with, again, with those check items, you would send off a copy of your certification and your W-9.
A copy of that application is actually in the chat box for those on the call for your reference.
So back to the PowerPoint, we actually go over the certifications that are accepted, but again, that list is not an all-inclusive list. Give us 1 second and we'll get to that page for that. There we go, that slide right there. So again, this is not, the list is not all-inclusive, but these are some of the certifying entities that we do accept. And then again, a list of that CSA that you keep hearing me talk about, the Columbia, Orangeburg, Newberry Combined Statistical Area. You have to be have an office in that area for at least a year. And then we also talked about being socially and/or economically disadvantaged. And the Office of Business Opportunities, depending on the certification that's accepted, that will determine either one or both, whether you're socially disadvantaged or economically disadvantaged. And again, those are defined by our SBA. So on Cdbe projects, we have a goal that is set by the city manager on projects that are $200,000 and above. And the goal is based on the relative availability of subcontractors who are able to perform work on a specific project. So CDBE does not apply to our MPP, which is our Mentor Protege program, as well as CDBE goals can only be met utilizing CDBE and DBE contractors. And I do want to point that out because sometimes we use the word prime a lot at times. So sometimes we'll have someone come in and they'll bid on a solicitation. And at that time, that prime or will come in and basically say, well, you know, I'm a CDBE and I'm certified. You know, can I just use myself to perform the CDBE or DBE work to get to the program goal? Unfortunately, this program is just for subcontractors when we're counting CDBE and DBE goals. So I just want to make that clear. So here we are already at our first question slide. Does anyone, I'd like to open up, does anyone have any questions? Or Kalina will be working our chat today. Do we have any questions in the chat?
We do have one question in the chat, Juliet, from Venu Pierpali. He wants to know, and I don't think you covered this yet, but what is your current CDBE goal for project? Well, Melissa just answered it, and she said that the CDBE goal varies based on the project and the specific subcontractor task needed to complete the project. So just to make sure that everyone has an understanding that the goal varies based upon the project. So it's not going to be the same goal every project. It could be 1% on one project and another percentage on another project. So again, that goal varies on the project and the subcontractor tasks that are needed to complete the project. And what that means is if there is mobilization, remove and replace concrete curbs, remove and replace concrete sidewalks. Next question from Kim Ormiston. She said, can women-owned business outside the 8 county apply for CDBE status? They cannot. You have to be in the 8 county CSA. So if you are located, let's say Sumter County, you wouldn't qualify unless you move your office to one of the counties in the 8 county CSA. So Juliet, if you want to add on to that.
Go ahead, Juliet.
Yeah, I did want to mention, we don't want to defer you from not applying. We'll later on, we'll get into the application and the actual check box. And I think that Kalina actually put a application in the chat box so far. Up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see a checkbox for OBO compliance. And one checkbox is for CDBE and another is for DBE. So, you know, later on today, we'll be talking about how we keep a database of CDBEs. We also keep a database of DBEs in case that an offeror cannot find a CDBE within the CSA, that they can find a DBE off of our directory for DBEs as well. So we encourage everyone to complete the application.
And we have another question, and I just put the application form in the chat, and we have another question that just came in the chat. What is the estimated time of approval for CDBE status?
I believe we put 3 days. We're going to talk about that later on in the slide as well. And I did want to go back to that first question that you had, Kalina, to the person who asked that first question. We are going to go over the methodology at a high level overview and just kind of discuss how we come about setting goals, or how the city manager will set a goal on a CDBE project. So that might answer your questions even more.
Okay, another question just popped in the chat. And I think if Aisha, if you can jump on and answer this one. Will slides be available for this presentation after today?
Yes, I actually can answer that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Slides will be available, like I said, at the end of the presentation. We probably have about like 6 or 7 items that we're going to send to everyone. So yeah, slides will be available and be sent to everyone at the end of the presentation today.
Okay, another question just came into the chat from Gina. She wants to know, if your office is in Charleston, South Carolina, can you become a CDBE in this area?
So Christina, to answer your question, you would not be a CDBE because you're not living in that your office is not located in the CSA. However, like I said earlier, we do encourage you to fill out the application form for the CDBE/DBE. We can approve you as a DBE and put you on our DBE directory.
And the next question from C. Brown: can an out-of-state entity with a virtual office that is registered with Richland County and the state be considered for CDBE certification?
I see Melissa.
And Melissa said, you must be within the 8-county area to be a CDBE, but you can still participate as a DBE outside of the CSA in meeting the CDBE goal. Simply contact our office and make sure your business is added to the DBE list that OBO maintains. And that's just what Juliet was just talking about, that if you are outside the 8-county CSA, again, if you're outside the 8-county CSA and you do apply, we can put you on the list as a DBE with the City of Columbia. You won't become a CDBE, but you will be considered a DBE with the City of Columbia. Another question, and I think this is going to be the last question because we still have a lot of—
Kalina, before you move on, I wanted to say one more thing in regards to that. I don't want DBEs that are on the call to be discouraged again from participating in our program. One of the major changes that we're going to discuss is something that will allow you to actually be part of the good faith efforts that the offerer or the prime must make in trying to reach the CDBE goal. So even if you're not a DBE within the 8-county area and you can't become a CDBE, you still can help the prime reach their goal. So one thing that what they're going to talk about later, I don't want to jump ahead of Juliet, is we now have a tiered approach in a process that we've put in place to make sure that our offerers go through a tiered approach. So the first tier would be our CDBEs. The second tier would be DBEs, any DBE within our 8-county area. And the third tier is any DBE within the state of South Carolina. So you still can be part of this effort to make sure that DBEs are actively participating in subcontracting opportunities on city projects. So again, don't be discouraged. Please, we still want your active participation in making sure that we have a DBE participation. To answer Jimmy's question, a CDBE that serves, can a CDBE prime satisfy the CDBE goal on a project? Unfortunately not. The purpose of the CDBE program is to increase subcontracting opportunities for our DBEs. So a CDBE that competes on a project, your CDBE designation would not count towards the goal being met. Is the DBE office accepting new? The CDBE office, our OBO office is always accepting applications. There's no time frame for when you submit your CDBE application. You can submit it year round. Again, the turnaround time is only 3 days. 3 business days. What if you're already a DBE? That's great. Go ahead and submit your paperwork and get it to us, and we will register you as a DBE. Where's your CDB directory located? It's on our website, but it's also going to be in your guidelines that you're going to get at the end of this presentation. The links will be there, but we'll send all of that information out to you after the presentation. What about out-of-state contractors? You will have to compete like everybody else, but you can, again, compete. You just have to make sure that you're utilizing CDBEs or DBEs within the state of South Carolina to meet that goal. Can you share your experience in the past year, and are you able to meet your CDBE goals? Is there any challenge you have having to meet these goals? One of the reasons that we made these changes to our policy and to our guidelines, because we were having problems with our primes meeting these goals. So with any program, you have to make modifications, and some of these modifications we think will not only increase the pool that primes have for meeting the goal, but also it makes it easier for the city to encourage participation. We've opened it up to not only DBEs within the 8-county area, but also throughout the state. So we're hoping that we will have more of our offerers or primes meeting the goals that we place on projects now. And it's also easier, and Juliet's going to go through that a little bit later. Okay, I think that's all of our questions.
And Melissa, I'm sorry. I'll just go ahead and say this real quick. There are a lot of questions that are coming in the chat on information that we have not covered yet, but it is going to be coming as we go through the presentation today. So if your question has not been answered, keep in mind that we still have a lot of ground that we have to cover before we get to a portion. So just for those of you who are putting questions in the chat, we appreciate it, but just keep in mind that we still have a lot of information that we need to cover, and we're still covering regarding your questions.
Okay. And I think I've already answered the questions thus far, but we will try to answer your questions. And if time does not allow for us to answer all of the questions, we will send out a question and answer follow-up after this presentation based on the chat questions that we don't cover. Thanks, Juliet.
Thanks, Melissa. Okay, so now we're going to go into the key elements of the CDBE program, items that have not changed within the program. So we will still continue to ensure that CDBEs have equitable opportunities to compete for contracts and subcontracts as the city. Definitions of a Columbia disadvantage, your CDBE, that has not changed. Our certified DBEs located with the 8-county CSA for 1 year may register as a CDBE. And again, that's the CSA counties that's listed there. The city manager still has the authority, as we discussed earlier, to apply the CDBE program to any project that is $200,000 or over. And the role of the Good Faith Efforts Committee still has not changed. They are still used, or they are still active in the program. So then going on to the next slide, processes that we ensure equitable opportunities. We arrange bid solicitations and times for submissions of bids or bid specifications to ensure equitable participation. We break down larger contracts into smaller contracts, working OBO and Wastewater hand in hand to include participation of smaller businesses. And then also we provide specifications in a timely manner to CDBEs, majority subcontractors, and business associates. And we'll discuss that later, different things that we are doing that are in place to do that. Provide technical assistance to CDBEs, as well as holding seminars and workshops for the business community with scopes of city procurement activities. So our next slide talks about, now we're starting to dive into the changes. So you should have gotten an email from us. And if you haven't gotten an email, you can go to the City of Columbia website under the Office of Business Opportunities, CDBE, and you'll see our new program guidelines. But this starts out with us adding a non-discrimination contracting policy, and that's to ensure that the contractor incorporates provisions of the non-discrimination contracting policy in all subcontracts for service work. I'm not going to get really in depth into this. I think it speaks for itself. And like I said, all of this information will be sent to you in our guidelines, and it's also on our website.
Juliet, can you go back to that slide? I want to give Sandra an opportunity to say something about this, since this is directly from procurement. Sandra, did you want to say anything regarding this new addition to our guidelines?
Oh, no. Good morning, everyone. Basically, as Juliet stated, it basically speaks for itself. But if anybody have any questions, specific questions after reading this, just place your questions in chat. And if we don't answer it today, we will definitely get with legal and make sure it's answered during the question and answer session. Thanks.
Thanks, Sandra. Next slide. Okay, so there is also a section in the guidelines that has been updated, and that is our direct outreach. And this section is helping offers meet their goal, their CDBE goal. So we encourage direct outreach to CDBEs that are within the CSA. And a list of CDBEs, which I've referred to earlier as our CDBE directory, can be found at our website. It's a CDBE Excel spreadsheet, that's our directory, as well as a DBE directory. But we'll get into the DBE portion later. But right now, we just want you to know about the list of CDBEs that can be found by going to our website. So here, this is really important. This is something that changed in the updates. And we want to make sure that offers understand that this must be done in order. So this is the tiered approach. So tier 1, as Melissa spoke of earlier, is utilizing CDBEs. So when they do their outreach, and there are specific steps in the guidelines that talk about how they can go about tier 1, we also have forms where they can document their outreach to tier 1 CDBEs. Is what offers would look for first. If they were unable to find any CDBEs, then they would need to move to tier 2. But before moving to tier 2, they need to document how they outreached to CDBEs. So going to tier 2, again, this is, as Melissa said earlier, this is the DBEs within the Columbia CSA. So again, if you couldn't find any CDBEs in tier 1, you would move to tier 2. In tier 2, if you couldn't find any DBEs within the CSA area, and again, you have to demonstrate that and document that you did that, then you would be able to move on to tier 3. Tier 3 is the utilization of DBEs within the state of South Carolina. So again, all those steps, those tiers must be done in order for your good faith efforts. Okay, next slide. Okay, so again, continuing the items to help you meet the goal is in the offer. CDBEs and DBEs and offers should attend pre-bid, pre-solicitation, and outreach events. Now, this is very, very important. We encourage not just CDBEs and DBEs, but we also encourage the offers to attend. And this is another another way for us to help you meet that goal. So you can build those relationships and know what CDBEs or DBEs are out there to help you meet that project's goal. 4, we have offers are encouraged to begin solicitation to CDBE firms immediately following the pre-bid, pre-solicitation. So again, we'll have that pre-bid, pre-solicitation meeting. And again, I don't want to step on Sandra or Shannon's toes, but we'll have that pre-bid, pre-solicitation meeting. And separately, we will have an outreach meeting, and you need to attend that. All those meetings are extremely important to helping you meet the goal and be successful in bidding or on a solicitation. The CDBE goal percentage can only be met by using CDBE, DBE subcontractors. And again, we spoke about this earlier. I know I spoke about it, Melissa spoke about it, Jimmy Chow asked questions on it, but just to reiterate, the offer the offer can be a CDBE or DBE, but that does not count towards the CDBE goal place on a project. It has to be a CDBE or DBE subcontractor. That will go towards meeting that goal. So I believe earlier in our questions, someone asked about the percentage, or where does the goal percentage come from? Is it different? Is it always the same? So it's different for every single CDBE project. So we utilize a methodology It's the same methodology that DOT uses, but the goals established based on relative availability and use of CDBEs who are able to assist the City of Columbia in completion of a certain project. So this is calculated by determining the relative availability in the method that is below. So we determine ready, willing, and able firms. So we go to the SCDOT and we pull all of those firms. We go to SMBCC, which is their small minority business, and we pull all those firms from their database, and we go to our City of Columbia eBid system and we pull all of those as well. And then once we have all of those, we determine your ready, willing, and able firms in the market area from the census data. So we also go to the census database and we pull from that. So then we take the number of the DBEs that we found from our information above, divided by the number of all the firms, and that gives us our base figure for relative availability. And then you can see that the goal is calculated utilizing availability and weight. So we just don't, take a project and put a 10% goal on it. We go out and we look and we see who is available within our area. And we use this methodology to come up with our percentages for each individual project. So then here we have the methodology continued. So our final goal may require some adjustments. It may be due to previous projects, information from our disparity study. As Melissa said, we have a new ongoing disparity study, as well as data that could affect CDBE participation, as well as the cost of equipment purchased or leased by a prime or a CDBE from a prime contractor that does not count towards the DBE credit. So if a charge for the use of equipment is part of the cost of the DBE's contract, it would be deducted from the CDBE's credit allowed for that contract. Okay, so we're back to our questions. I know we had a lot of information in that section. That's why I just kind of wanted to pause here before we move on to the next section, where we kind of go into other items. But if we have any questions, Paulina?
There were some questions in the chat that me and Melissa, we answered. But one thing, if you could talk about, there was a question, I did answer this, but if you could elaborate on it a little bit. But going back to the tiered, when you were talking about the tiered approach and documenting bids, one person wanted to know, how do you document that you have solicited a bid?
Okay, so that is something that we will cover and go over. That's in our forms area. It's actually part of our appendices. At the end of the guidelines, there's actually a form where we require certain information to be filled out, showing documented proof that you did try to contact CDBEs first in that tier 1. And then there's a second document in our appendices that goes on to tier 2, and then a third for tier 3. So we will be going over that more in depth in a few moments.
Okay, next question is the CDBE program implemented to all City of Columbia departments or just sewer and water?
Right now, and Melissa, you can add in on this, but right now we are using it for water and sewer. We have used it on other city projects, but again, these are all it can really be any project. I want to say sky is the limit. It can be any project, $200,000 and over, and that's at the city manager's discretion. So it's got to make sense for us to put CDBE on there. It's got to have enough subcontracting opportunities. It's got to have enough DBEs that are ready, willing, and able. So there's a lot of things that go into that before we just, put the CDBE program in a project.
Great answer, Juliet. I do want to talk a little bit about why we do not use the CDBE designation for the prime to count towards the goal. Again, keep in mind, this program is really designed not only to increase the participation and utilization of minority and women subcontractors, but it's also designed to build the capacity of those subcontractors. So that's another reason why this program is more specific to our subcontractors, not only for utilization, but also to build the capacity of those said firms. Thanks.
We don't have any more questions in it. Oh, well, we just got one that just came in. Can you continually update the CDBE directory to show all the certified companies in alphabetical order. Newer certified firms have been shown at the bottom of the directory list, and when firms check for our company, they are at times not seeing us as they are searching for our firm in alphabetical order and are not noticing that our firm is listed lower down in the list. And this is from Judy Helene.
We will do that today. Thank you very much.
Okay, nothing in at this time, so we can go ahead and proceed on.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Galena. Okay, so now we're moving on to more of the program guideline updates with the letter of CDBE commitment. So again, this is also something new in the program, and and we'll get more in depth into this. It's called the CSP process. We'll ask for a letter of CDBE commitment from the offeror. And again, that's found in the guidelines under Appendix D. And in that letter, there's 3 sections. So section 1, the offeror would check one of the following 3. The offeror states if they will meet, exceed, or meet the CDBE goal percentage. If they haven't met or exceeded it, they would say that the offeror states that they have secured 50% or more of the CDBE percentage goal. And if they haven't done that, then they would check off offer states that they have secured less than 50% of the CDBE goal percentage. And I will add in, and we'll get more in depth later, that if you check that 3rd box that says offer states that they have secured less than 50% of the CDBE goal percentage, good faith efforts are required. Section 2, the tiered approach. Did the offer use the tiered approach in order, tier 1, 2, and 3? And we've kind of been discussing that at least twice that I know of so far on the call, but it's very important. We would not want somebody to be non-compliant by not following the tiers in order. So again, you need to document tier 1. And once that has been documented, if you cannot find any CDBEs, you would move to tier 2. And then if you couldn't find any DBEs in the CSA, you would move on to tier 3, which are DBEs outside the CSA in the state of South Carolina. And then finally, section 3, the offer agrees that CDBEs will perform at least 50% of their portion of the project. So that is something, the 50%, the portion of the project, that has always been something of this program, to where the CDBE has to perform at least 50% as a minimum of their portion of the project. Okay. And then we'll move on to the good faith efforts. So I just kind of wanted to pull out our good faith efforts definition. And I do want to add also that we added a definition section in our guidelines, which was not there before, just to define new terms, existing terms, to make it a little bit easier for everybody to follow along. I know sometimes we have a lot of acronyms, so we want to make sure everybody's up to date. So for the good faith efforts, it's for the contractor to show that they have taken all reasonable steps to ensure CDBEs perform services or provide materials on contracts in the amount that meets or exceeds the CDBE contract goal. So again, it talks about the offer certifying in their letter of CDBE commitment that we spoke of earlier, that if the CDBE percentage is below 50% of that CDBE goal, that they need to submit good faith effort documentation and records during the CSP, as I referred to earlier, which is your compliance submittal period. Offers, again, must use the tiered approach and cannot deviate from the order of tiers 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and here, just a shortened version of our good faith efforts. Again, you can find these in our guidelines. I believe it's under section 9 in the good faith efforts. Within that, you'll see that for in the past, it was 7. We've narrowed it down to 6 good faith efforts, and all required documentation is also listed in there as well. And with good faith efforts, you also have some appendices, some charts, and different items that you can use to help show your good faith efforts. But again, the first one is that you would attend that pre-bid or pre-solicitation meeting and outreach event, which will be a Zoom meeting for an upcoming solicitation that we have out there, and we'll be discussing that later as well. So make sure that you're attending these meetings. They're very, very important, as well as sending out broad-based advertisements, written or electronic notices to CDBE subcontractors, follow up to initial solicitations, requesting assistance, helping to find CDBEs in the CSA, as well as other areas, and then utilizing certified DBE contractors. Okay, so we'll still talk about meeting good faith effort requirements. For the new guidelines, primes must now maintain and keep good faith effort documentations for at least a minimum of 3 years for each CDBE project. In the past, if you met the goal, you did not have to provide good faith efforts. But now what we're saying is if you are 50% below, 50% or below, you have to provide good faith efforts during that compliance submittal period. And again, we'll go over that again later on today, but I just want you to know that if you're 50% or below, you have to submit your documentation, your good faith efforts documentation at the compliance submittal period. However, even if you meet, exceed, or you're 50% or above, what we're saying here is that the city has the right to go back and audit CDB, good faith efforts documentation. So everybody must do good faith efforts documentation. It's just the ones that are 50% below the CDBE goal that would need to turn their good faith effort documentation in at that compliance submittal period stage. So primes can include digital or print advertisements in meeting CDBE goals placed on a project. In the past, we didn't have digital. Now we've added digital. So I'm sure some of you will appreciate that. The city reserves the right to audit good faith effort paperwork at any time, which is what I was talking about before for number one. Offers that repeatedly fail to meet the specified CDBE utilization goal placed on a project will be audited by the city. So good faith effort logs, they are found in the appendices of the guidelines and to show offers exactly what information is required in each tier. So good faith effort committee, like we said, that hasn't changed. We still have a good faith effort committee and they will be reviewing all the good faith effort documentation for offers who do not meet the goal at 50% or more. Okay, and then here we have, we're gonna pull up a CDBE good faith efforts checklist. Again, this is a new document that we've kind of created to help the offeror walk through step by step exactly what we're looking for and what that good faith effort committee is looking for. And again, that checklist, it is required. It's at the end of the guidelines. It's Appendix D. And thanks for pulling it up, Aisha. So here we have the cover sheet, which just kind of goes into different items like the DBE directories, SCDOT DBE directories, SMBCC or small business directories. And again, these are all efforts to help you find CDBEs and DBEs to meet this CDBE goal on any project that the city puts out. Can you scroll down a little bit more? Oh. Thanks. So, and just so that you can see, this is the more in-depth part of that checklist. And it goes into, again, like we went over all 6 of the good faith efforts. Here you see each item. And then, did you provide that? Did you provide a broad-based advertisement? And you go through all these items for the offer to provide. And I really want you to keep in mind that this is an all or nothing. So you have to have all of these items. If you don't have all of these items, you would be found as non-compliant. So that's why we want to give you this checklist to make sure you know exactly what we're looking for. Okay. Thanks, Aisha. Okay. So now we're going to be talking about the good faith effort committee review, compliant, non-compliant. So OBO will convene the good faith efforts committee to review good faith effort documentation. And again, those would be documents from the offer that was that failed to meet at least 50% of the CDBE goal placed on a project. And again, we'll get into the IFB, the information for bid, as well as phase 1 and phase 2. So the committee consists of representatives from OBO, as well as other members of other city departments. And once that review they verify that the offer made CDBE subcontracting opportunities available to broad-based or willing and able CDBEs, DBEs, and other certified minority business and women-owned businesses, enterprise subcontractors based on good faith effort guidelines outlined in the guidelines. So again, that's just the good faith effort committee reviewing everything, making sure that checklist is complete and that nothing was missed, deeming them either compliant, meaning they have met everything in that checklist, or non-compliant, meaning they have missed some items in that checklist. Okay, another item that's new, and I'm gonna reach out to Sandra. I'm gonna phone a friend and let Sandra speak up on this. I do know that Sandra was great in helping our OBO team come up with a General Administrative Review Committee, which is known as the ARC, A-R-C, and it involves any type of appeals process that they would go through this committee, and that the ARC, they would review an appeal within 5 business days after the receipt, and then they would render it in writing to the ACM for the using department. Is there
Absolutely, Juliet. The goal here is to always give the bidders the opportunity to grieve. If you have any kind of concerns about our processes here within the city, and especially in this case where it has something to do with the CDBE program, we want to have a committee to take a look at your concern. This is based on whether or not you were deemed as possibly being non-compliant. There will be a way that you can appeal that decision, and then a final decision will be rendered from the city. So again, the goal is not to deem people as non-compliant to this process. So we're going to do everything possible to take a look at your appeal and work very closely with other offices, including our legal office, to make a decision that's basically is going to be on the best interest of both the city as well as the bidder. And if y'all have any questions about the appeals process, just please submit it to us and we'll definitely consider that as well. Thanks, Juliet.
Thanks, Sandra. Melissa, did you have anything to add? Are you good?
I'm good. I just want to reiterate what we're trying to do is make sure, as Juliet mentioned, our good faith efforts requirement, it's something that we have been very, very deliberate in bringing to the forefront of our policy and our program guidelines, so that it's more objective and less subjective in our good faith efforts committee review. So it's either you're going to have everything or you're not. And if you have everything, we'll deem it based on the review by the good faith efforts committee, then we'll deem it compliant. If not, it's non-compliant. What we're looking at is making sure we give you all the information that we can in order for you to meet the goal. So the purpose of this program is to meet the goal. It's not to not meet the goal. We have gone through extensive reviews and efforts of the data, looking at the data, so that we know that this goal is achievable. So our goal that we place on this project is actually less than the goal if we were to look at it on a statewide basis. So we have given you an opportunity to meet the goal, but we've also given you an opportunity to meet the goal in different ways through the revisions that we made in this program. So now we're not just looking at the 8-county area, we're giving you the opportunity to go beyond the 8-county area to meet the goal. So again, the intent is to help you meet the goal, but the bigger intent is to make sure that we're opening up subcontracting opportunities to our women and minority subcontractors, not only within our 8-county area, but throughout the state of South Carolina. So again, the intent is to meet the goal.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
So moving on to audit of good faith efforts. So again, as we spoke about earlier, that the city deems the right to audit any good faith effort paperwork as it deems necessary. So offers that repeatedly fail to meet or exceed the specified CDBE utilization goal placed on specific CDBE projects will be audited. Audit findings may result in suspension of an offeror's participation in future CDBE projects. In an audit, you may question, okay, so when will the city do an audit? Well, the audit of good faith effort paperwork will be triggered when the offeror fails to meet the CDBE goal placed on 3 CDBE projects over the course of a fiscal year. That's July 1st through June 30th. And the Good Faith Effort Committee will be convened by OBO to review the good faith effort paperwork and perform the audit. So now we are back to our questions again. I know these sections are full of a lot of information. So if you have any questions on that section that we just covered, again, we have a lot to cover still. We have Procurement and Contracts coming up next, talking about the IFB, which is our information for bid, stage 1 and stages 2 that happen within that IFB. So if you have any questions on that, please wait until the next section.
Okay, Juliet, we got some questions in the chat. The first question is regarding the letter of CDBE commitment. Is this letter required with the bid, or will this letter only be required of the apparent low bidder after the bid opening?
That letter is required by all offerors. So, like I said, we'll get into that literally in the next section. It's that CSP, that compliance submittal period, where all offerors on a specific project will need to submit that letter.
Okay. The next question, I'm guessing this is from a current CDBE participant, but I think Melissa answered it, but I'll go ahead and just give it for the audience. There have been projects where the city did not issue the full work order for tasks we intended to use our CDBE to complete. Is there a process to reduce the requirement for CDBEs to perform 50% of the work established by the offer when work orders are not issued by the city? And Melissa's response was, we will likely look at such occurrences on a case-by-case basis. In the event that does happen, we would like for the offeror to find other subcontracting opportunities to maintain the CDBE goal placed on a project. So if you guys want to elaborate or add on to that.
That's good.
Okay. The next question is from Ms. Gloria Tanner. She wants to know if an apparent low bidder or prime firm is determined non-compliant with the CDBE requirements, including not meeting good faith efforts, will the city determine the firm non-responsive? And I think Melissa answered that one as well. If the good faith efforts are not met, the offer will be determined non-compliant or non-responsive. You guys want to add on to that? Okay.
Yes, well said.
All right. Next question from Judy Helene. If the CDBE on a project or team as a subconsultant also requires a tier 3 subcontractor to complete its work, is that CDBE subcontractor also required to satisfy CDBE goal for its subcontracting requirements on a project?
So right now, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but right now we look at tier 1 and tier 2. So we look at the prime and we look at subcontractors. We do not look at sub of subs, not for this program at this time. Again, if you are a CDBE, you are hired by a prime project, and if that CDBE decides to hire somebody to complete 40% of their portion or 20% of their portion of the work, that's fine, but we are not tracking. That is not going towards that CDBE goal for that specific project. So again, you would just have to be a subcontractor. It would not be a 3rd tier sub. We're not tracking sub of subs.
Okay. Nothing coming up right now in the chat, so we're good to go.
And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Sandra and her team. I believe Shannon Lazinski is going to be presenting, and forgive me if I said your last name wrong, Shannon.
That's okay. So good morning, everyone. We are happy to participate this morning in this very important training. As Melissa and Juliet have explained, a lot of thought and effort have already gone into all this revised program information, and we want to make sure that we are helping make that as successful as possible. So you will have the pleasure of working with the Procurement and Contracts team when responding to bids involving the CDBE program. And we play a neutral role. We are here to ensure a competitive and fair process. So all communications, once a procurement is issued in eBid, all communications must stop and only go through the Procurement and Contracts group. We want to make sure we really reiterate that to you. The procurement process itself is not very different. It will still involve advertising, a pre-bid meeting, a bid opening. We'll still have an award phase. So all those pieces will still very much be there, but we will give you some more detail on some of the things that have been added to that for those involving CDBE program projects. So on the screen before you, we have listed out our primary procurement steps for projects involving CDBE program. And this next slide outlines specific documentation required at different points along the way. So you can already skip to the next slide. Here. So we list out here the documents required for some of those steps along the way. Gary Porth is our procurement manager for construction services. He's going to take you through each step specifically.
Thank you, Shannon. Welcome everybody. And as Shannon mentioned earlier, I think it's important again that I say when a solicitation is what we call on the street, when it's been placed on our electronic bidding website, eBid as we call it for short, communication is only allowed at that time between procurement and contracts and anybody out in the public. So if there's a question that comes, if it's an OBO question, or if it's a question about the project, the technical specs or anything else, that communication is to be directed to OBO. Once we're directed to procurement and contracts. What procurement and contracts will then do, just like we do when we have a questions deadline, we take those questions and then we disseminate those questions out to the appropriate people or departments and get those answers formulated, and then we'll put an addendum out back to the solicitation with all the questions and all the answers. So it's important a very important point that Shannon brought up. The communication when a solicitation, as I said, is on the street, needs to come be through procurement and contracts and anybody who's communicating about that solicitation. And procurement contracts will take it from there. Getting back to, as Shannon said, the new process and the slides, this is step one. And in the previous slide, well, in the slide that you're looking at right now, I've got it pulled up on my screen too. If you look at step one, and if you go to the next slide, please, I'll talk a little more about step one. Thank you. Step one is when the project is advertised, and the procurement process basically commences with the advertisement of the bid. The IFB is released basically to eBid just like we're doing now. As we have a very broad base that we put it out to everyone. And procurement contracts will host a pre-bid meeting. That's always, I say always, 99% of the time it's non-mandatory. We don't like mandatory meetings, but we won't, because that somewhat limits competition. And as Shannon said earlier, we are all about being fair and equitable and open, but we're neutral in procurement contracts. So we don't favor one bidder or one group over another. We want to put it out for everybody. We answer questions, we treat everybody equitably. So we'll have the pre-bid meeting. Again, it'll be non-mandatory, but highly encouraged. And then after the pre-bid meeting, OBO, again, it's not part of what procurement does, but they will have an outreach event, and they generally do that right after we have a pre-bid because they've got, the group is usually assembled, and so they can just go and carry on. We'll close the pre-bid meeting, and then they'll go into the outreach event for things for CDBE programs and like what we're talking about today. The next slide, please. The step two is the deadline for submitting the CDBE participation information on required forms. This is an added step that's been added with the revisions to the CDBE policy and guidelines, whereby a CSP, that stands for compliance submittal period. That letter of CDBE commitment that Juliet spoke of earlier, there'll be a time that committal letter is due, along with the CSP, the committal, the compliance submittal period participation log, and also the good faith effort documentation if applicable. And again, I think it was gone over earlier about the three different options for that, the compliance portion. You'll either meet the CDBE goal that's been specified, you'll certify in an affidavit you'll meet the goal, you'll certify in the affidavit that you will meet 50% of the goal, or you'll certify in the affidavit that you'll meet less than 50%. And if you select that third option, that you're going to meet less than 50% of the specified CDBE goal, that is when you will also have to submit your good faith efforts. The next step.
Gary, excuse me, I didn't mean to cut you off. Can we go back to the step 1 slide? Thank you so much for mentioning the good faith effort piece. I just want to draw attention to the third bullet here on step 1. So procurement and contracts will host a pre-bid meeting. It's non-mandatory but highly encouraged. Going back to your good faith efforts, it is non-mandatory for procurement and contracts. But if you're meeting less than 50% of the goal, it is required as part of your good faith efforts that you attend this meeting. So if you are planning on having to submit good faith efforts documentation, you will need to attend the pre-bid meetings as part of your good faith effort requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. All right, and if we go back to step 3, Step 3 is that after the compliance submittal letter has been submitted, procurement contracts will then forward all that information, CDB information, over to our Office of Business Opportunities, and the OBO office will then review and determine if a bidder is compliant or non-compliant. Basically, they'll go through the process. If a bidder has submitted that they will, or a prospective bidder has submitted that they will meet less than 50% of the goal, then the committee, which you talked about earlier, will convene and they'll determine again compliance or non-compliance. Once that's determined, is to the prospective bidders who are compliant and non-compliant, OBO will then submit that back to us. And what we'll do is then we'll notify, we being procurement and contracts, will notify all of those prospective bidders who submitted a compliant submittal letter for the project. We'll notify them as to whether they've been deemed compliant or whether they've been deemed non-compliant. And only the compliant, the ones who've been deemed compliant, will be able to submit a bid when we come to the bid opening. Again, that's the next step, I think. So if you move to slide 4. Step 4, I keep calling it slide 4, step 4. Step 4 is the bid opening. Again, I mentioned earlier, there were 2 time portions of this new process. The first one is the compliance submittal project portion, where you submit your compliance submittal affidavit indicating what percentage of the project CDBE goal you will meet. And then you'll be determined compliant or non-compliant. And then the second portion, for those who've been determined compliant by OBO, they will then be able to submit a bid. And this is pretty much the normal process that you've been used to in the past of submitting your bid. It lists here the things that have to be submitted with your bid, uploaded to our eBid system. And it's pretty much the same as before, but they will also be listed in the solicitation as to the items that need to be returned. And those include such things as the bidder acknowledgement. Basically, that's page 1 of the solicitation, your total bid amount, which is usually included on page 5. They're on or about page 5 or 6, usually. It is specified in each solicitation. The bid form is also to be returned. Your bid bond, along with your power of attorney, your prime business information statement, your business information record for subcontractors and subconsultants. Again, in this case, we're talking about subcontractors. That's another required submittal. Your non-collusion affidavit, your local business enterprise qualification statement. If you're not already a local business enterprise, let me say a little bit about that. If you're not a local business enterprise, and this project, most projects that we do for the city are local business enterprise projects as well, you have to become certified by the city as a local business enterprise prior to the submission of your bid. There's a sample in the bid itself. So that will need to be submitted before if you need to be qualified as an LBE. The affirmative action utilization plan, the organizational conflict of interest statement, copy of the bidder's general contractor's license for certifying that they're a South Carolina licensed general contractor. And again, acceptance of bids will only be, the ones that be accepted will only be from bidders who've been deemed compliant in that first step by Office of Business Opportunities. And then once if you say you're going to meet the goal, let's just go back to that. If you say you're going to, let's just say we got a 12% goal, CDBE goal. You certify in your compliance submittal letter that you're going to meet that 12% goal, then that's an affidavit that you're submitting. It has to be notarized and submitted as an affidavit. Once you submit your bid, you've been deemed compliant, you submit your bid, and let's just say you only meet 10%. Well, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. So that runs into some non-responsiveness issues. So again, once you submit what you're going to submit as your goal, what portion of the goal you're going to meet, you're required to do that, or either you'll be held non-responsive because you didn't do what you said you would do. Next step, if you go to step 5, I'll try to wrap this up right quickly for you. Step 5 is the Procurement Contracts review of compliant bids, and I think I went over that just now. We'll review for responsiveness and responsibility, and then step 6 is we'll submit to the end user the bid analysis, and we'll get a recommendation back from the end user. OBO again will review the submissions is that everybody actually submitted the actual CD percentages that they indicated on their earlier submittal letter, and make sure all that's in agreement, and then we'll send it on to City Council for approval, and then the project will move on. I think that's the last of our steps, and so we'll turn it back over to Juliet, OBO.
Thanks, Gary. I did want to, I know this goes right into the program guidelines, but I did want to give everyone the opportunity to ask procurement contracts, and thank you, Sandra, Gary, and Shannon. If you have any questions, is there anything in the chat, Kalina?
Yes, we just got, this is a question for procurement and contracts. After the award contract, will you also assist in getting subcontractors getting paid by primes in a timely manner? I heard this is a challenge currently for subs getting paid across the DBEs.
If you want me to take that, in our solicitations, we have what we call a prompt payment affidavit. It also has to be submitted, and what that does is certifies that the bidder has to certify that they will pay their subcontractors within, and then don't hold me to this, I think it's a 20-day period after they receive payment from the city. If they don't, then they'll have to deal with some issues as well, because that also has to be, it's an affidavit, so it's a notarized statement that the bidder has to submit saying that they will comply with the paying their subcontractors within a certain period. And again, don't hold me to it, but I believe that's 20 days.
Yes, I would like to see if Melissa wants to comment on any kind of efforts that OBO also tries to assist to make sure the subcontractors are actually paid in a timely manner. I understand that the relationship is basically with the prime as far as the city is concerned, but do you have anything else to add to that, Melissa?
I sure do. Thank you, Sandra. One thing that the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunity does is monitor the pay applications that come in for CDBE designated projects. So we're able to look there to see what the offerer or prime is requesting funds for and who he or she is paying. So that's how we monitor whether or not the subs are being paid. We also work with Procurement and Contracts and Columbia Water when payment has been sent out to a prime, to make sure we notify the prime, the prime and the sub when payments have been made. So if there's a payment that the sub is linked to that's being requested on 100, then we'll notify that sub that a payment has been made. So that is something that we do. That's how we monitor, and we keep a running list of that. Right now, we do a lot of this manually. Hopefully, over time, with our disparity study, we plan on implementing some new types of ways to collect our data. But right now, we are manually looking at those pay apps to monitor what money is being requested, how far along in the project they are, to make sure that if the prime or the offerer stated they're going to have a certain percentage, that percentage is met. Thank you.
All right, no questions in the chat right now. You guys want to go ahead and proceed?
Thank you again so much, Sandra and Gary and Shannon from Procurement and Contracts. So moving on to the CDBE program guidelines, complaints. It's a new section that we've added to the guidelines. So if we receive any complaints concerning CDBE policy, it would definitely be investigated by OBO or designees of the city manager and reported to the city manager with a recommendation for resolution. The information could also be reported to the city manager or to who would report it to the city council as deemed necessary. Another area that was added brand new to the guidelines is the additional rules and regulations. So basically stating that the city may, with the approval of the city manager, add additional rules and regulations non-inconsistent with the policy of federal, state law, regulation, or granted requirements as needed, and that the city manager, she is reserving the right to review and or remove programmatic provisions should it be found in the best interest of the city. Another new item to the guidelines was the variability clause. So that's in the event that any provision or any part of that CDBE utilization policy is found to be invalid or unenforceable. Only that specific part or provision that's found and not the entirety of the policy would be inoperative. And then we also have our program compliance area where, and Melissa kind of touched on this in her response, OBO, we are currently monitoring pay applications through the entire contract, beginning to end, to ensure that CDBE subcontractor goals are maintained as well as subs are being paid. Like I said, it's throughout the duration of the contract. So the offeror must attach a monthly subcontracting report. And like Melissa stated, that's our Form 100, in which we track all the payments, applications submitted to the city. And we track that, we track our payments to the CDBEs and subcontractors through that form. And that form also includes any expenditures to any subcontractors working on the project, regardless of amount. And OBO we will also maintain records and provide reports annually to the city manager and city council, just to ensure full compliance with the CDBE program. And then we have CDBE subcontractor substitution, last paragraph. I think Kalina touched on this about subcontractor substitution, or Melissa, one of the two, where if somebody had an issue and a CDBE that was used towards the CDBE goal, we'll say was overextended or was unable to perform work, that they would actually, that prime and that CDBE would have to send a letter into OBO or talk to OBO and let us know that they're trying to do a substitution. And again, that substitution of that CDBE subcontractor or of a subcontractor, you would need prior written approval by the Office of Business Opportunities. And then also, we would also like to ensure that if you are looking to replace someone or do a substitution, that you're looking for, if it's a CDBE, that you find a CDBE company to replace that CDBE company to keep that goal accurate. Also, I did want to touch on the harm that shall accrue to the public is difficult to accurately estimate in advance. So consequently, the contractor and the city shall jointly agree that a responsible forecast of such damages is not less than 10% of the subcontract price, and that the parties intend that such sum shall constitute liquidated damages as the best estimate of the harm accruing to the city. So that is also very new to our CDBE guidelines. So please, again, I encourage everybody, we're touching the surface here. We're diving deep into certain areas. I really encourage everybody to go out to our website. And again, we will be emailing this to you, but please review them from beginning to end. A lot has changed in these guidelines, so we want you to keep abreast of the new changes. Okay, and here, does anyone have any questions? And it's not just on this section, but maybe from the beginning of our PowerPoint to now. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Hey, Juliet, if you could, can you go back and touch on then the good faith efforts portion. Can you talk a little bit about, if you have the time, if you can talk about a little bit about broad-based advertisement?
Okay, so broad-based advertisement, again, that's going to be in your checklist. You actually need to supply us with a copy of the advertisement that you submitted, digital, again, digital or print, with that newspaper or that that entity that you posted the advertisement with, along with numerous other items such as, and again, I'm just touching base, there's a whole list in our guidelines, and that's included in Appendix D. Name of the offer, things that you have to put in that broad-based advertisement, the City of Columbia project name and publication dates, areas of listed work available for subcontracting, so you have to pull those items out. Again, I don't want to cover all this here. It's listed in our guidelines. It's listed under good faith efforts, number 2, and that's section 9, good faith efforts. And it's also listed in our Appendix D, which is that good faith efforts checklist cover sheet.
Okay, and just one follow-up to that. Is there a timeline requirement for advertisement periods for primes before they go from one tier to the next tier?
I'm sorry, say that again, Kalina.
Is there a minimum timeline requirement for advertisement periods for primes before going from one tier to the next?
I believe in section 9 of the good faith efforts, it actually speaks to that. It talks about no less than 15 days.
Okay. All right. And nothing in the chat at this time. But I think we have someone that's got a question. Well, we don't have any questions in the chat right now. We can go.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kalina. So we'll go on and we'll continue with that. Okay. So here back on our PowerPoint slide, we have the different appendices that are, again, at the end of our guidelines, our CDBE guidelines. Appendix A is not included. So Appendix A is has not changed. It still talks about the goal and the example goal for methodology. But as you can see, Appendix B is new. That is the, I believe somebody asked earlier about the compliance submittal letter. And again, Aisha, thank you for pulling that up. That's our compliance submittal letter right here. And that can be found in Appendix B at the end of the guidelines. Next slide. There you go. And then also we have Appendix C, which is your compliance submittal period participation log. So again, we put in here, this is where the offer submits this during their CSP period. So you'd have the letter and you'd have this participation log. Now, the only time that you would need something else during that CSP period is if you were an offer that did not meet the goal and you're below 50% of the goal. Then in that case, you must submit all good faith effort documentation and records as part of their CSP. And then here we have Appendix D. So this is your good faith efforts. Again, like Melissa said, this checklist cover sheet, this needs to be included in with all your documentation for your good faith efforts. And again, we created these appendices and these forms to help ensure that the offeror understands what the good faith effort committee is looking for and exactly what the City of Columbia is requiring that you provide us for this review by the good faith efforts committee if you're below the 50% of the specified goal. And I believe there's again, that's just showing items 1 and 2, and obviously we all know that there's 6 items in the good faith efforts. So this is about a 4-page checklist with the cover sheet included at maybe 5. And then we have Appendix E, which is another good faith effort solicitation log sheet. I know somebody asked earlier, well, what are you looking for? What documentation? So right here, this page number 3 shows that we're looking for the date, the name of the business, the scope of work that they can provide, who the contact person is, the telephone number, all those things are included. So we kind of made this a lot easier. Before we didn't have this spelled out or exactly what we were looking for or in a form. So we hope that this helps the offer to guide them in what we're looking for. And then Appendix F, this is the follow-up communications log. So the offeror would submit this again if their CDBE percentage was below that 50% of a specified goal. I saw Nikki, sorry not to jump ahead, but is email an acceptable form? Yes, so since the pandemic, before we used to ask for certified letters or the mailing envelopes, and it was pretty detailed. And since COVID of last year, we made the decision to use emails. However, if you're going to use emails, you're going to have to print those emails out as part of your good faith efforts for us to review, with the timestamp on it, who it's to, who it's from, all the detailed information. But again, all that can be found in the guidelines. Now moving on from all the changes, I do want to come to our capital improvements project list. I want to thank Clint, Dana, and Andrea for all their help and their team of Columbia Water. They supplied us with a list for capital improvement projects for 2021 as well as 2022. As you can see, we have over an estimated $40 million worth of projects still to be completed. And again, I would like to add that this is a draft, so some items may change, including possible programs used on those projects. But we wanted to give you an idea of what the City of Columbia has up and coming for solicitation. And the next slide also shows this is wastewater. Oops, sorry. Okay, so this is wastewater. This is a draft, and this is $80 million worth of work that needs to be completed in the city over the next year. So we will be emailing you this as well as a better copy. I'm sure some of you can read this. I'm sure some of you are like me and have glasses on, so we'll email you a better copy so you can read that. But I just wanted to give you an idea.
Julia,
yeah.
I just wanted to state where you see CDBE and MPP listed by a project, that does not mean that they're going to have both of those programs assigned to it. We will not, a CDBE project will not be an MPP project, and an MPP project will not be a CDBE project. So right here, it looks like, but we're not sure yet exactly what designation it's going to be, whether or not they're going to make it CDBE or MPP. Just so we have that.
Melissa, can you repeat that statement, because you were going in and out a little bit?
Okay, what I was saying was that when you look at these lists, well, for here, for instance, you see for project number SS7286, CE projects not yet defined, other, and it's 2.35 million, and it has beside there listed both programs, our CDBE program and our mentor protege program, listed right beside each other. So we do not assign CDBE projects are not MPP projects, and MPP projects would never get assigned a CDBE project as a CDBE project. So right now it looks like we're not sure exactly whether or not we're going to assign that project CDBE or MPP. So that's why you see them both listed beside each other. But just don't think that we combine programs, because we don't. Not here. No.
Good point, Melissa. Thank you.
Dana, did you want to say anything? I know Clint was on here a while ago, but I wanted to thank Dana, her team, and Clint for all the hard work that they've done and for getting this to us. Did you want to say anything?
Sure. Thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of it. It's been a great learning process for us, and I think having the CDBE is going to be a great addition to our program for the mentor protege. And like Melissa said, that is undefined, means that the projects are coming up, so we're not exactly sure what the best fit would be. So looking at the availability and the capacity and figuring out what works best. But we're excited. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana and Melissa. Okay. So moving forward, we'll talk about our first outreach event. So right now, if you go out to Procurement and Contracts, you'll see that they actually, on our City of Columbia website, you'll see that we have our first CDBE project out for bid or out for solicitation. And that is for the Gravity Sewer Green Lawn Drive to Burnside #1 Pump Station Phase 2. So that's SS 7258. We've already sent out emails to the CDBEs, and we will follow up today's meeting with an invite link to the pre-bid, as well as an invite link to the separate outreach events. And we also, today, if you go to the next slide, and again, that's Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021, and that's for primes, CDBEs, DBEs. Even if you'd like to attend and maybe you're just a DBE and you're not a CDBE yet, but you put in an application with the City of Columbia to become a CDBE, you are more than welcome to attend. Like Melissa said earlier, it takes us about 3 days, and that's at the most to get a CDBE application reviewed and approved. So I just encourage anybody who's listening on the call today who's a DBE to come out and just apply for CDBE. So here it shows some of the portion of a subcontractor, different opportunities that have been identified on this project. And again, for this specific project, the city manager has set a goal of 17%. So, and that is a CDBE goal. So what we're saying is whoever the prime contractor is awarded this specific project, they have to ensure that 17% of their subcontracting area is given to a CDBE. So items that the CDBE could perform are all listed below, such as milling 2-inch, 16-inch DIP sewer, miscellaneous connections, traffic control, remove and replace concrete, road pavement, soil compaction test. There's a lot of subcontracting areas in here. And again, we set the goal at 17%. Our hopes is that the prime contractor may find other areas beyond the areas that we've listed here to find CDBEs to work on, and they could, they could have 20%, they could have 25%. Sky is the limit. It's just that we've set that minimum goal at 17% on this project.
Juliet, can I just say one more thing? Again, these are just examples working with Columbia Water of the different possible subcontracting areas that we need to look at. However, there are other areas that we may not have considered that Juliet mentioned can count towards your goal as long as you have a CDBE or DBE in that area, in that subcontracting area. For instance, we have someone on here that has drone capabilities. So if there's a hard to reach area that we're looking at, and you may not be able to have the manpower to actually go and get to that area, you may be able to use some drone footage to help you do an assessment of the project and or what we're trying to do. So just think outside the box, be innovative, and make sure you're doing your outreach, because we do want you to meet the goal. We're not only giving you more flexibility here, but we've given you much more to work with when it comes to meeting the goal. So, and when we set the goal at 17%, if you go beyond that, that's great too. The more the merrier, but we certainly have given you enough opportunities here to meet the goal, but also opportunities to be flexible and go beyond what's being asked to make sure that the project is being done and done correctly. Thanks, Juliet.
Thanks, Melissa. Well, we've actually come to the end of the presentation. However, I do want to mention to all of you that we're going to follow up with an email, and in that email is going to be a copy of this presentation, a link to view the recording of the presentation, a link to the pre-bid meeting, a link to the separate outreach meeting that is coming up this Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021, and that's for the Gravity Sewer Green Lawn Drive CDBE project. We'll also send you the CIP list that were in the presentation to make sure they're more legible for you. We'll also send you a survey for today's meeting. So I'm I'm asking everybody, please fill out the survey. This survey really helps OBO determine future trainings that are needed. And also we will be sending you our new CDBE brochure. And again, as always, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to email myself or the OBO team. The website has been listed throughout the entire presentation on the questions section. And was that you, Kalina?
Yeah, that was me. And I'm sorry, a question just
Okay.
came in the chat for you regarding change orders. And I apologize, but this just came in. How will you handle change orders? This will affect the percentages for CDBE subcontractors. Their percentages may go up or down depending on if the change order is associated with the CDBE specific task. Will the prime be responsible? Will the prime be penalized if their percentages go down?
So, and Melissa, you can add to this, but as Melissa said earlier, we are tracking payments, change orders, all of that. So we see when money may be added to a project, and that's when we get involved and ensure that the percentage is constantly met throughout the duration of the project. And if you look in the guidelines, that is put in there multiple times that the offeror is responsible to ensure that throughout the duration of the project, the CDBE goal is kept at that percentage. So if it starts off at 17%, it should stay 17% throughout the duration of the project.
Thanks. That's a great answer, Juliet. And I'll just add, keep in mind again that this is also about building the capacity of our DBEs and CDBEs. So if there is something that they can learn or you can help them further develop, this is certainly an opportunity to do that. When you have some changes that are made for project, to be more inclusive with those subcontractors, develop a relationship with them so you know what they can do, their capabilities, but also find out some things or areas that they're looking to further develop. So just keep that in mind. So just because they have certain capabilities now going into this project, maybe you have some opportunities when there is a change made where you're decreasing that area of the subcontractor's contract, you find another area for them to work on as a way to build their capacity. So again, this is about building capacity and helping, not only utilizing our minority and women-owned businesses, but also building their capacity at the same time. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah, there is one question, but this question is not related to the CDBE program. But if you have questions about programs that were mentioned, like there was one about MPP, Mentor Protege Program, could you, if you can, just contact our office, and I'm going to put that information in the chat on how you can get in touch with us if you have any questions regarding the Mentor Protege Program.
Sounds great, Kalina. Thank you. Well, again, I'd like to thank everybody who is presenting today. Thank you, Columbia Water. Thank you, City Manager, Mayor. I mean, thank you, Procurement Contracts, everybody. I mean, it really did take a team effort to make this happen, and we just want to thank everybody. And as like Kalina said, if you have any questions, please give us a call here at OBO, and please review the guidelines. They are out on our website for you currently. So thank you so much, everyone.